let's talk a little bit to that person who knows they need to hire, right? They got nothing. They got nothing. They haven't even created a post yet.
Cousins, they've been to their friends, they've been through their...
Yeah. Well, and everything else is work, right? And I'm not saying that like they don't want to do the work, but it's unfamiliar territory, right? And what I found in business growth is that whole people prefer a familiar hell to an unfamiliar heaven really reigns true. They'd rather stay in their capped, business than they would experience the discomfort of growth. Yeah. Yeah. And so for somebody that's at that point, but they go, you know what? No, I do want to grow. And they got nothing. What would you recommend as some starting points for them to be able to, source and identify great talent and to bring them in?
Yeah, so the first thing, and this is going to sound maybe ethereal or whatever, but I think the first thing you have to be is very honest with yourself and ask the question, why do I want to grow? Right? And think there's a lot of different answers to that question. And if you can answer that question honestly, it's going to help you understand who you need to recruit. Because some people just want to grow for growth's sake. But any client I onboard, I always ask this question: what is the goal? Like, what are you trying to achieve? I signed on a client not too long ago who said, I want to get to 100 million in sales. I'm like, cool. Why that number? Tell me more about that. And the more we talked about it, the more unpack it, the more we understand it. Now we can start giving them recruiting advice. Okay, if that's true, and here's why you're trying to do this, let's start thinking about who you need to recruit then, and who you need to find to hit that goal.
That makes
Sometimes
sense.
Goals are just arbitrary. Like we just think, oh, that would be cool. Or, it'd be really cool to go tell my family I'm making $3 million this year. I don't care what the reason is, but let's be honest about what that reason is.
Sure. No, that definitely dictates how you get there.
Yeah. And then let's figure out, okay, if that's what it is, let's create a roadmap to find the types of people that can help you get to what you need.
Right.
The other question you have to ask is, what am I really good at? What am I not good at? What do I like doing? What do I don't like doing? Like, what is it? So if you think about like someone, if you just do something simple, like, so I ran, my team is 5. For a long time, it was 2 of us or 3 of us. Usually it was 2. And we just wanted to keep it small on purpose. That was our goal. We didn't want to get bigger than that. We just wanted to keep it this small, little intimate kind of niche-based business. And we've grown since then for a couple of different reasons. But the idea then is, okay, let's look at this and say, if I can answer the why, and then I can get to the what needs to happen because of the why, and then you can start recruiting and filling your talent around that, it makes more sense about who you're trying to develop. But you have to understand who you are.
Right.
Like, what am I good at? What do I not like doing? Right. And then backzone that way. Like, then kind of working backwards.
Have you ever read any books from Dan Sullivan or Benjamin Hardy?
Not Benjamin Hardy, no, but Dan Sullivan, yes.
So they co-authored a book. They co-authored a series of books. Who Not How, Gap in the Gain. And we actually got to meet. McBilly and I went to one of the masterminds wherein we had a week in Mexico last week, actually, with Mexico, and we spent a pretty intimate hour or two, somewhere between an hour and 2, with Benjamin Hardy, and he was going over a lot of the concepts in the 10x is easier than 2x, which it releases like next month, and they both collaborated on it, and it really played in, and there were some concepts that kind of link. There's definitely a connection between like that 10x book, Who Not How, and Gap in the Gain. But it was essentially the concept of, if you want to go to 10x, you have to be willing to find out, instead of how do you do this, who will do this for you. And you need to, it's that your world will change, but you can either get rid of things, some things you can't get rid of. And if you can't get rid of them, you have to find the right person to handle them so that you can actually grow. And as he essentially talks about the inverse of, and the reason 10x is easier than 2x is, 2x requires you, or for 2x, you can keep about 80% of what you're doing right now, change about 20% of it, and get some linear growth, right? And on 10x, it's like you have to abandon or be willing to abandon about 80% of what you do, what you know, and really like hone in on and master the 20% that you're great at and magnify that and just delegate everything else or abandon it, right? And so the example that he gave was actually his Ben's son Caleb. They live in Orlando, and they were doing a tennis practice, and his coach had asked him at tennis practice, hey Caleb, you ever thought about going pro, right? And he's like, no, not really, right? Hey, this is a teen, so these are kind of one of those like parental conversations that you have with your kid, and so that was kind of it. On the ride home, Ben asked Caleb again. He goes, "Hey, did you think? Have you thought anything more about what your coach said?" And he was like, "What about going pro?" And he goes, "No." And he goes, "I know you want to go to college and get a scholarship for that, but I think you should consider that." And so they talked more about it, and eventually Caleb was like, he's like, "Yeah, actually, it would be cool to be a pro, right?" And what Ben talked to us, he goes, in Orlando, there's thousands of coaches that are plenty well qualified to help my son get into college with a scholarship. That's not honestly that big of a difference from what we're doing now. He's like, but the question starts to change when we go, okay, well, if the destination is not college, it's pro. There probably is less than 5 coaches around us that can actually help him develop to that point. And that's assuming he only needs one coach to do that. We may have to have other coaches, right? And so it's this idea that there are much fewer paths to 10x something. Therefore, there's more clarity. It's not easy, right? The work is not easy. But if you try to 10x something instead of 2xing it, because 2x can be achieved with linear growth over time, right? Incremental changes, small tweaks. But that 10x is like you have to abandon conventional wisdom and get really creative and specific about what you will do and are, what you're willing and able to do to grow. And it also is a filter for like, if you're doing bullshit right now, you can hide that at 2x because you're like, well, I can keep doing this and juggle. You can't do none of that bullshit to get to 10x, right? So it really runs this filter. But the thing that I thought I thought a lot of it was profound, but the idea of the 80% most likely isn't all going away. But if you don't have the right people in the right spaces to be able to put that labor, to be able to have, and one of the things I've learned on this journey is there's a bunch of stuff that I used to be like, who would want to do that? And it's like, I've actually just learned, everything I hate, there's somebody out there that just geeks out on it. Now to me, that's weird, but that's why they're not me. Right. And I just learned to kind of embrace. Right. Yeah. And so I think that understanding is part of why McBee and I have been able to, thrive in each other's presence in this partnership.
And I think your analogy of the college and pro thought process it's a good analogy. I guess it was this gentleman who written this book, which I haven't read, but this idea I think comes back to this point of, by the way, it's okay to be a college tennis player,
right?
That's okay. Like if you weren't just being a college tennis or even a high school tennis player, you have to be honest with what you are, right, what you need, and the work you're willing to put in, and then who are the people I need to surround myself to get there. Like, we don't all need to be pro tennis players, right?
Sure.
It's like this idea of like, what does that look like? And then how do you surround yourself with the right people to get where you want to go? Mm-hmm. But you have to look inward, right? It's that, it's the quote by, I just forgot his name. Man's Search for Meaning.
Oh, Viktor Frankl.
Viktor Frankl, yes. He talks about response to stimuli, right? That it's actually the space between response to stimuli that gives us our growth and freedom. And from a PI perspective, what that means is, here's my natural drivers. Something happens. Here's how I want to respond to it. And Frankl talks about, well, it's not just about responding to stimuli. It's the space between. It's the time between the stimulus and the response where you get to choose what you want to do. And it's usually contrary to the response that you want to let go that really gives you your growth and freedom. So like, do you have the ability as a business owner, as you're starting a business, understanding this just happened, here's how I'm going to respond. I need to hire someone who sees the same stimulus but responds differently. And I have to let them do that. I have to step out of that. And because the way I'm responding to it is not growing the business like I need it to, I need to find someone who looks at the stimuli differently and responds differently and be okay with that.